after the weigh-in?
Listen,
after the weigh-in,
we're not going to get into a weight talk.
I think he's calm because of the size.
Yeah. Is that his best route to victory, just to impose himself?
Yeah.
Chris Eubank's looking at Conor Benn, he's talking to him, he's thinking to himself, when do I splat this egg around the side of his head? When do I do it? How do I do it? Do I put it in his face? Do I put it on his head?
So he's a wide favourite. He's boxed George Groves. He's been in there with
Arthur Abraham.
He's a big punch in super middles, do you know what I mean?
I've initially started off with Chris, even though I wasn't impressed with his last fight.
The drama surrounding Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn's second collision did not begin under the bright lights, nor in a roaring arena that had waited years to witness this rivalry reach its breaking point. It began long before their ring walks, long before the commentators sharpened their takes, long before the promoters began to posture and gamble. It began in that electric intersection between pride, legacy, and the dangerous certainty that this rematch would not just settle a score, but redefine both men in ways that no decision could truly capture. As the cameras rolled and the crowd swelled, the announcement of the former British IBO and WBA champion sparked a reaction that rippled like a current through the arena. Chris Eubank Jr., carrying the weight of a boxing surname etched in British folklore, walked toward the ring with the cold assurance of a man who believed he had already solved the puzzle standing across from him. The memory of their first confrontation, clouded by controversy, scrutiny, and the bitter stain of postponed ambitions, hovered around them like a ghost that refused to move on. Eubank entered with sharp eyes and sharper intentions, a man who had seen his legacy questioned.
Even though I think the inactivity of Conor for the last 15 months might affect it, even though I think...
his punch resistance might not be what it once was, and might not be the fighter he once was. I'd say he probably is a little bit sharp, but...
Is he going to see me? Because if Conor would have seen him, he might have blocked it and check-hooked him. But it was quick. He distracted Conor by...
His discipline measured, and his resilience challenged in ways that demanded answers under the lights. Across from him, Conor Benn paced like a fighter determined to reclaim not only momentum but identity. His journey to this rematch had been shaped by storms he never asked for, dragged through accusations, investigations, and headlines that threatened to dismantle him before he could offer his rebuttal in the only language fighters truly trust. Fists, grit, and heart. Standing in the ring now, smaller in every metric except determination, he carried the energy of a man fueled by injustice and redemption in equal measure. For him, this wasn't only about beating Eubank. It was about reclaiming control over his own story. When the first bell rang, the fight ignited with no feeling out rounds, no gentle probing, no polite respect for pacing. Benn came forward with the urgency of a fighter who refused to let size dictate destiny, sliding into openings and firing with that compact explosiveness that had become his calling card. Eubank answered with the clean, disciplined counters of a man who had spent years sharpening fundamentals, snapping out his jab and testing Benn's willingness to walk through fire. Every exchange carried a rumble of danger. The commentator spoke of pace, of weight, of calculated risk, but in the ring there were no analytical lines, only instinct. The rounds unfolded with a rhythm of tension and defiance. Benn's burst forced Eubank backward more often than expected, while Eubank's experience shone through in moments where timing, not size, tilted the advantage. Yet each round left the audience with the sense that the story was being written in real time, with no clear direction, no obvious winner, only a mounting chaos of willpower and damage.
He's the older fight of the two. I'm side towards Chris, but I'm going to wait until the weigh-in.
Conor Benn hasn't beaten anyone or fought anyone of the stature of the people that he's performed against, has he, Eubank? If you look at his resume...
Saying, what did you say? Then he reached for the egg and he clattered him right around the side of the back of the ear and the face, and the egg yolk went everywhere. A lot of the yolk...
Behind the scenes, the corner saw details the public did not. Benn's corner watched Eubank's reactions closely, the heaviness beginning to settle around his jaw, the subtle changes in footwork, the small signs that the fight was carving deeper into him than the scorecards might reflect. Whispers began to travel from ringside to commentary booths. Eubank was hurt, maybe seriously. As the rounds continued, the tension thickened, fueled by the unspoken truth that this fight was becoming about more than points. When the final bell sounded, the atmosphere flooded with adrenaline and uncertainty. The judges delivered their official verdict, awarding the fight to Eubank Jr. But the night refused to let a simple announcement settle the conflict. In the hours that followed, confirmation emerged that Eubank had been rushed to the hospital with a broken jaw, fueling Benn's claim that he had taken something from his rival that no judge could measure. "You may have won the fight," Ben said, "but you're the one in the hospital, not me. If you take a man's soul, that usually means you win the fight." It was a line that crackled across social media and newscasts, not simply because of its intensity, but because, in some eyes, it held truth. This was not a night of small emotions. Eddie Hearn, visibly overwhelmed, praised Ben with the pride of a man who had walked with him through the darkest corridors of the past few years. Hearn called it the beginning of something larger, the emergence of fighters shaped by adversity and hardened by the desire to prove himself against all odds. He spoke of heart, of resilience, of the emotional weight Ben carried into the ring. Whether or not Ben had won on the cards, Hearn believed performance would install him in the hearts of the public, a people's champion forged through turmoil rather than titles. Not all voices saw it the same way. Kell, Brook, blunt in his assessment, noted the obvious weight difference and insisted that while Eubank was no Golovkin, the size disparity carried undeniable influence. Brook acknowledged Ben's aggression and energy, but also recognized that Eubank's natural mass played its part, especially late in the fight as fatigue set in. Still, even Brook couldn't deny the spectacle delivered by both fighters, a clash that fulfilled the hype and validated every ounce of anticipation that had preceded it. But the physical war inside the ring was only one layer of this rivalry. The psychological battles had started long before fight night, most visibly during the now infamous egg-smashing incident at the press conference. Eubank, ever theatrical and always willing to weaponize chaos, cracked an egg on Ben in a stinging callback to the controversial drug test saga that haunted their first scheduled meeting. It was a moment designed to provoke, unsettle, and seize control of the mental battleground, a move that bordered somewhere between comedic and cold-blooded. Fighters like Carl Froch later reflected on the significance of such mind games, drawing parallels to his own rivalry with George Groves, how emotion, if left unchecked, can kill an entire fight before punches are even thrown. Froch, analyzing styles and history, spoke logically despite the chaos that surrounded the rematch. He pointed to Eubank's pedigree, to the battles with Groves, James DeGale, Arthur Abraham, and the hard lessons learned at world level. Ben, by contrast, had never shared the ring with that caliber of experience. Froch acknowledged Ben's explosive power, but placed his confidence in the proven durability and size of Eubank Jr., a man who had climbed higher up the ladder and survived more rigorous tests. Roy Jones Jr., who had previously trained Eubank, echoed a similar sentiment, but introduced the unpredictable variable that made this matchup dangerous. Eubank was a bigger, more seasoned fighter, he argued, but Ben carried the kind of one-punch power that could rewrite a fight in a heartbeat. One clean shot from Ben, and the entire narrative could flip. Jones reminded listeners that Liam Smith had already shown the world that Eubank could be cracked with the right timing and the right pressure. It was that element of danger, the fragility beneath the physical advantages, that made the rematch so compelling. Amir Khan entered the discussion as well, adding his experience of moving up in weight to tackle giants like Canelo Alvarez. At first, Khan leaned toward Ben's aggression, convinced it could overwhelm the naturally bigger man. But as the weigh-in approached and the size disparity became undeniable, he shifted his prediction toward Eubank. Physics matters, Khan explained. Weight divisions exist for a reason. And while Eubank was no Canelo, the gap between them was still significant enough to influence the fight. Ben Shalom, Eubank's promoter, pushed confidence to the edge, predicting a stoppage in the middle rounds and calling the rematch a guaranteed firefight. He described both fighters as men who refused to box on the back foot, the kind who thrived in chaos rather than calculation. Shalom openly embraced the risk, even accepting a £1 million bet offered by Eddie Hearn, though Hearn seemed to waver later, prompting Shalom to publicly urge him to honor the wager. The back and forth only added fuel to an already volcanic buildup, yet overshadowing everything was a question of weight. Eubank, who had fought as high as super middleweight, now had to make a contracted limit that many argued placed him at risk. Cutting too low, fighters warned, could drain a man of all the attributes that made him dangerous: strength, chin, explosiveness. Even Chris Eubank Jr. voiced concern, speaking about the dangers of extreme weight manipulation and the unseen risks fighters often endure behind closed doors. For Benn, the weight difference represented the mountain he had chosen to climb, the danger he embraced to meet a rival on terms that were never meant to favor him. But danger is sometimes the engine of legacy, and that is why both men stepped through the ropes willing to risk not only victory, but identity, reputation, and the fragile path that carries a fighter from contender to memory. As analysts debated, promoters gambled, and legends cast their predictions, the rematch took shape as a collision of two fighters at entirely different stages of their respective journeys. Eubank, the seasoned warrior, hardened by battles with elite names, carrying both the glory and the wear of a veteran. Benn, the younger force, fueled by controversy, armed with hunger, driven by a desire to prove himself in a fight many believed he should not win. Their attributes clashed in the ring like opposing realities: Eubank's size and structure against Benn's ferocity and speed. By the time the dust settled, both men had been tested, both had been hurt, and both had been pushed into the depths that reveal truth inside a fighter. The judges rendered their verdict, but the aftermath told a more complicated story. Eubank left with the official victory, yet also with a broken jaw that hinted at a different kind of defeat. Benn walked out without the decision, but with the psychological edge that comes from knowing he inflicted the deeper wounds. Outside the ring, the world of boxing wrestled with its own interpretations. Some argued the judges got it right. Others insisted the real winner was the man who forced the bigger fighter into the hospital. But the deeper truth may lie somewhere else entirely, that both men stepped into something larger than a rivalry, larger than a single night, and carved their names into a generational saga shaped by pride, conflict, and relentless will. Their rematch was not just a fight. It was a statement, a collision of heritage and hunger, of two fighters determined to turn controversy into legacy. And for all the debates that still circle the outcome, the night ensured one undeniable thing. Both Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn walked away as characters etched into the evolving story of British boxing, destined to be talked about long after the arguments settle. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into one of the most explosive rematches in British boxing, let us know what moment stood out the most to you. Did the judges get it right, or did the real winner walk out without the decision? Share your thoughts in the comments, hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another dramatic breakdown. Your support keeps this channel alive, and we've got many more battles to explore together.